Samuel had always known that his grandparents were his safe haven. As a child, he spent countless days in their warm, cozy house, surrounded by their love and guidance. It was a small, yet charming home, filled with memories of family dinners, laughter, and the smell of his grandmother's cooking. He wasn't like the other kids who had moved away from their families or distanced themselves from their roots. Samuel had always been close to his grandparents, and they had always made him feel like the most important person in the world. Over the years, he grew even closer to them, taking on the responsibility of their care as they grew older. While other family members lived busy lives, Samuel made sure to visit them regularly, keeping them company and helping out with any tasks. As he matured, Samuel never questioned the future. He knew without a doubt that his grandparents would leave him their legacy. Their house, their savings, and all that they had worked for would be his one day. It wasn't just about the inheritance. It was about the love and trust that had been built over a lifetime of shared memories. He had given everything for them, and in return, he would inherit their legacy. That was the promise. But promises are fragile, and the reality of those promises is often much more complex than Samuel could have ever imagined. It was a typical Wednesday morning when the call came. Samuel was sitting in his small office, reviewing work reports when his phone buzzed. The lawyer's name appeared on the screen. It was an unusual call, one he wasn't expecting. He hesitated for a moment, then answered it. "Mr. Thomas," the lawyer said, his voice calm but somehow distant. "There are some matters we need to discuss regarding your grandmother's estate." Samuel's heart skipped a beat. He had always known this moment would come, the reading of the will, the formal passing of their belongings, but hearing it now in such a serious tone sent a chill down his spine. "Your cousin Brian has been named the sole heir of your grandmother's estate," the lawyer continued. Samuel's world spun. He thought he had heard wrong. "What do you mean?" he stammered. "Brian, he's the sole heir." But the lawyer went on to explain the details of the will, telling Samuel that Brian had not only been named the sole beneficiary of the estate, but had already made arrangements to take full control of the house, the savings, and all other assets. Samuel felt his legs go weak beneath him. His mind raced as he tried to process what he was hearing. How could this be possible? He had always been the one who had been there for his grandparents, looking after them in their old age. He had spent countless hours by their side. How could they have given everything to Brian, the cousin who had barely shown interest in them? The next few days were a blur of legal jargon, unanswered questions, and a deep sense of betrayal. Samuel could hardly bring himself to face the truth. He tried to reach out to Brian, hoping that this was all a misunderstanding, that there was some explanation that would make sense of this madness. But when he called Brian's phone, there was no answer. Feeling lost and desperate, Samuel went to the family home, hoping to confront Brian and get the answers he so desperately needed. As he entered the house, memories flooded his mind. Memories of family gatherings, warm evenings spent with his grandparents, and the knowledge that he had always been there for them. But now, as he looked around, it felt empty. The walls that once held so many happy moments now seemed cold and unfamiliar. Brian finally showed up later that afternoon. He walked in, wearing his usual confident smile, but Samuel could tell there was something different about him. Brian wasn't the same person he had once known. The man who had always been a part of the family now seemed like a stranger. "Samuel," Brian greeted him, his voice cool and detached. "I hope you're doing well." "How could you do this?" Samuel asked, his voice trembling with emotion. "How could you take everything from me? You know how much this meant to me." Brian remained calm. "Look, Samuel," he said, "Grandma and Grandpa made their decision. You've always been the one they turned to, but they didn't want to burden you anymore. They wanted me to take over. It's nothing personal." Samuel's heart sank. The words felt like a slap in the face. Brian wasn't apologetic, he wasn't remorseful, he was indifferent. He had always been the charming one, the golden boy of the family, but Samuel had always believed in the bond they shared. This betrayal cut deeper than he could have ever imagined. As the shock wore off, Samuel realized he couldn't just accept the situation. This wasn't just a family squabble over money. This was a deep betrayal that could not go unchallenged. He refused to let Brian take everything without a fight. His grandparents had trusted him, and Samuel would not let their legacy be stolen so easily. Determined to uncover the truth, Samuel hired a private investigator to look into Brian's actions. He wanted to know everything: how Brian had managed to manipulate the will, what he had done behind the scenes, and how long this had been planned. Samuel pored over old documents, spoke to anyone who might know something, and dug deeper into Brian's past than he ever had before. What he uncovered was even worse than he imagined. Brian had not only manipulated their grandparents into leaving him everything, but he had also exploited their weaknesses and used their trust to secure his own future. Samuel found evidence of fraudulent activity, falsified signatures, doctored documents, and lies told to everyone, including their grandparents. This wasn't just a betrayal of family. It was a calculated, deliberate act of deception. Brian had been planning this for years, and Samuel had been too trusting to see the signs. Samuel knew it was time to confront Brian once and for all. He couldn't let this go on any longer. Armed with the evidence he had gathered, Samuel went to Brian's house for the final showdown. "Brian, you've crossed a line," Samuel said, his voice steady but filled with fury. "I know what you've done. I know about the fake signatures, the lies, everything. You've betrayed me and our family, and I won't stand for it." Brian remained silent for a moment, his eyes narrowing. "You really think you can win this, Samuel?" he asked, his voice cold. "It's over. You've lost." "No," Samuel replied, his voice firm. "I'm not going to let you take everything. Not after what you've done." The confrontation was heated. Words were exchanged, accusations were thrown, and the tension between them became unbearable. But in that moment, Samuel realized something important. Winning the inheritance wasn't what mattered anymore. What mattered was standing up for what was right, no matter the cost. The legal battle that followed was long, exhausting, and painful. Samuel's case went to court, and Brian fought tooth and nail to keep what he had stolen. But Samuel, now armed with the truth, was determined to reclaim what was rightfully his. The court battle stretched on for months, each day filled with more heartache and tension. In the end, the court ruled in Samuel's favor. Brian was forced to return the assets he had fraudulently claimed. But the victory came at a cost. The family was fractured, relationships were destroyed, trust was shattered beyond repair. Brian, now discredited and defeated, disappeared from their lives, leaving behind a trail of destruction. Samuel, though victorious, was left with a deep sense of loss. The family he had once known and loved was gone, and the legacy of his grandparents, though restored, would never be the same. Years passed, and Samuel found himself sitting alone in the quiet of his new home. The money, the property, and the legacy were no longer important. The real cost of the battle was the relationships that had been lost and the trust that had been broken. Samuel had won, but at what cost? Looking back, Samuel realized that the true inheritance was not the house or the money. It was the love, the memories, and the values that had been passed down. Those were the things that mattered most. But trust, once broken, could never truly be repaired. And Samuel had learned the hard way that no inheritance, no matter how large, was worth losing your soul.